Today we are in season 2, episode 2, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the next step in our childhood journeys.
I think from probably, I don't know what ages, I guess you can, I can talk about me from age 1 to 5.
You can talk about any ages
and
you
like
want.
what happened to me, but then I think you have something specific that you really want to talk about.
That's right. Today I definitely want to talk about...
Thank you.
Is that a little bit better?
Yeah.
Okay. Last time I talked about our first memory, as we both did, and it kind of left off into one of my earlier memories, which is my parents getting a divorce. I remember, I think I was like 5 years old when they got the divorce. And I don't remember a lot, but I do remember one night my mom and dad were yelling at each other, and I remember walking downstairs and standing by the table and seeing them fight. And my dad was on one side and my mom was on the other side, and they were yelling across the table at each other. And I just remember them being really loud and waking me up from bed and going down and listening to the yelling. I have no memory of what they said or what they were arguing about. I just remember, and this is the weird part of my memory, but I've always remembered this. I remember me and all my siblings standing in a row watching them argue with each other. And there was 4 of us at the time. My mom was actually pregnant when they got a divorce.
Was baby number 5.
Mm-hmm.
Which, isn't that weird? Now you have 5 kids.
I know, that is weird.
Like thinking back to that moment of like, you've made it past that.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Not that you weren't going to make it past that. Just saying, you know?
Totally. But I don't remember as a kid my parents ever arguing. I don't remember them ever fighting or having any problems in their marriage, but I do remember that fight. And I remember moving into a different house, into a small house, and I remember visiting my dad. And I remember he was staying in the big house while he kept working at Disney. And I remember visiting him one time after my parents had separated, because they separated for a long time before the divorce actually happened. I think it was several months.
Really?
Many months, yes.
Probably, the whole time she was pregnant.
Actually, yeah. And so later now, I remember my mom telling me what happened, and she was counseled by a lawyer to not get a divorce until after she gave birth, because if the birth happened before the divorce or after the divorce, sorry, did I say that right? Don't have the baby or don't have the divorce until after you give birth.
Yeah.
Because if she gave birth after the divorce, it could be construed that it wasn't his baby.
Can you imagine Marshall saying he's not Mark's baby? He's like,
right.
He looks like Mark. He acts like Mark.
Obviously.
Like, I mean, he's not exactly like Mark. He's got his own personality, but it's just so.
Right. The point is, I just remember my mom still being married when she had number 5.
So she didn't want to be, but she was because.
Well, it's not that she didn't want to be either, and this is all later knowledge.
Finding out.
I didn't know this at the time because I was just 5, but I later learned that it was my dad who didn't want to be married anymore, and my mom was like really heartbroken over this because my dad was basically like, I just don't want to. I'm done, for whatever his reasons were. And I really don't want to get too much into the details of why they got a divorce and their own
also
drama.
It's debatable. All of it is kind of he said, she said debatableness. So
right.
So it's not something smart to get into for us because it's not applicable.
Right. But I will just share what I do remember from the experience myself.
I'm a nurse and a baby.
Got to multitask when you got a newborn, huh?
Yep. He's okay. He's happy.
But I remember going back to visit my dad in the big house, and I remember taking some apple seeds and planting them in the backyard and thinking, one day I'll come back to this house and they'll all be grown really tall. I also remember going back to visit him one time, and we were watching Fantasia, And I remember
he worked for Disney.
because he worked for Disney. But we were watching Fantasia on the TV, and I remember being like, "Dad, this is really boring. Can we fast forward like the beginning part? Because it takes forever to get to the cartoons,
to get to the good stuff."
And I remember him just being kind of irritable, like, "No, you can watch this. It's good for you," or whatever. And so I sat there and watched it. And I also remember during that same visit, Matthew peed his underwear.
Oh.
And he was probably 3, so he should have been potty trained, I guess, by this point. But he peed his pants. And I remember my dad making him sit in his pee as like a punishment for peeing in his underwear. And I remember him crying a lot.
Well, I've done that actually, so it's not that sad. I mean, it is sad, but it's kind of like a kid has to learn that it's gross and not comfortable in order to learn to not do it sometimes.
Right. So I remember visiting him. I don't remember very much at all else during this time in my life. My mom said it was a lot harder on me than I remember it being.
I would like to hear her perspective of like what you went through from her perspective.
Yeah. She has since told me that it was a lot harder and a lot longer of a process. But in my memory, it was like I have maybe 5 memories from that entire experience, and I don't remember much more beyond that.
Yeah.
I remember my mom dating a bunch of guys. And I remember one time she was dating this guy, and he and I were driving in the car, and I remember he let me drive.
Oh.
And I thought that was really cool. So I was sitting on the lap of this guy that my mom was dating at the time, and we were driving this car, and I remember turning the wheel too hard and like swerving into the other lane or something. And I remember he like freaked out and threw me across the car into the passenger seat and like took the wheel and kept driving. And I remember getting hurt. And then we were crying, and he was just like, I think he didn't know how to like take care of kids at all. Like
he's totally probably single man. That just
exactly, like
know.
A single guy, never had any kids himself.
He's like, let me see if you can drive. Oh, you can't drive.
You want to drive sport? Sure. And I get on his lap.
I'll be a cool guy today.
And it just like totally backfired.
Wow.
I don't remember much else about that.
How did your mom react?
I don't remember. I do remember there was a few times where it's like she dated a guy and he was really cool, and then he would do something or say something, and then she was like, "See ya," Like for having 5 kids, she was still pretty picky as to who she was dating.
Well, yeah, you'd have to be.
She wasn't just like
that
desperate.
She found someone,
Well, she wasn't like, I'll just marry whoever will take me. She was like, I have standards and I expect this and that, and I don't remember very many other people that she dated during that time in my life, but she found my stepdad really quick, and was married to him.
He's very different from your real dad.
Yeah, almost a year after. They were married in June, and Marshall was born in August the year before. So Marshall was not quite a year old by the time they got married. So my mom actually technically wasn't even divorced for a year before she was remarried.
That's pretty incrable.
I think so.
Considering she had 5 kids.
Yeah. But I do remember the wedding. And
do you?
I remember it was in my grandma's house. I
want to ask you something
house.
Really quick. Do you remember your initial thoughts on your stepdad? Like your first impression?
I remember thinking he was cool. I don't remember much more. I remember my sister Melanie yelling and calling him a robber because he was black.
He was Bolivian. He's not even black.
He's not black. He's Bolivian.
Oh,
but
wow.
I mean, he has brown skin, but it's not. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, doesn't matter his nationality.
Yeah.
He was born in California, raised in Florida. He was an accountant. I don't think he knows any Spanish. But his mom is from Bolivia, and he's pure-blooded Bolivian. Anyway, I remember, I think it was after the wedding, I remember Melanie freaking out. She's just my older sister by 2 years.
So she was 7?
Yeah, and just throwing a fit and being like, "You're not my dad. You're a robber. You're black." Blah, like all this kind of stuff. And it didn't take long for her to realize he was a good guy, and he took good care of us, and he was play catch with us. I remember one time soon after they got married, he taught me how to make my first paper airplane. And I remember him playing catch with me in the living room and teaching me how to play catch. Because here I am, 6 years old, I think, 5 or 6. I think they got divorced when I was 5, and I think I was about 6 when they got married
Okay.
to my stepdad. And so I remember being 6 years old and not knowing how to play catch. I didn't know any sports. I didn't have any physical fitness skills.
That's like
at
reminding
all.
me that our kids need to play catch.
I've played catch with them a lot.
That's good.
But like I remember standing in the living room and playing catch with my stepdad, and we'd count how many times we can catch it, and it was literally like 3 feet away, like the baby stuff that you normally teach a kid when they're really small, like 4 or 5.
6.
But I was 6 and I didn't even know how to catch. I just remember being like, I remember thinking about myself and feeling like there's a lot of stuff I don't know how to do.
Yeah.
And feeling incompetent and a little bit.
Probably just like you went through a lot, you know, it was hard.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that, when I'm sure your mom was in survival mode and not like, I need to think about each of my kids' well-being, you know, like where they need to be and what they should be doing by now.
She was definitely in survival mode.
I mean, that's
how
really
could you
traumatic.
not be? Single mom with 5 kids trying to date full time so you can get married and
have support financially and, you know, in all the ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a hard time in our family. And I remember it was during this time that I learned how to read. Yeah. When I was 6. And I remember struggling with it a lot. I remember catching the toads in our backyard, and my mom would babysit to earn extra money. Yeah. And so she had a lot of kids we were babysitting all the time. She basically had a daycare at our house. Yeah. And I remember my sister Melanie wanting to pee standing up like a boy.
Would she appreciate this story being shared with the whole internet?
I have no idea. I just remember that she used an empty toilet paper tube. And it worked. Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. Those are the things you remember when you were a little kid.
Yes. The interesting things.
I also remember really mean babysitters. Oh. I remember one time we had a babysitter. Me and my brother were sleeping in our bedroom, and the light was on in our room. And I remember we were talking quietly. I remember they were watching movies really loud in the other room, and I remember whispering to Matthew, and they would come in our room and be like, "Stop talking!" And they would yell at us.
They probably just didn't know how to take care of kids.
I think there are people that are like that in the world. Oh. Like, yeah. I think that's probably how they were raised. I think there's a lot of people that don't have good parents or good role models. And they
screaming at you.
Yeah.
Stop talking.
Yeah. Like everything you do is a bad thing. I think there are really people like that. And fortunately, I was blessed in my life to never have to experience that for long periods of time. It was just the one babysitter. We told our mom we don't like them, and they never babysat again. Good. But I remember they turned off the light and then shut the door. And in my childhood mind, I saw an evil spirit in the ceiling, and it was a green face glowing, and it was like really freaky to me. Yeah. And I remember like panicking and screaming bloody murder because I was like, "Oh, I saw a ghost," you know? Yeah. And for years and years and years, I believed I'd seen a ghost as a kid. Yeah. And it wasn't actually probably until I was even an adult that I realized when you turn off the light and shut the door very quickly, there's a little bit of a glow left over from the light bulb. And it was kind of a glow in the dark glow, green, that it wasn't really a ghost. I just thought it was because my mind.
Even if an adult explained that to you, you probably would have been like, no, until you saw it again, and you know.
Right. So anyway,
we probably took the time to just explain to you. Well, yeah, that's interesting. That's hard because sometimes the kids will say stuff like that, and I'm like, it's just your imagination, you know, don't worry about it, this or that. When in reality, it's real to them. Right. I remember a lot of times. It's good to talk about these things because I'm like, that's true. I remember feeling as a young kid, adults not believing me when I saw something. Well, for good reason, because kids will just say random things all the time and get away with stuff.
I remember my mind playing tricks on me and seeing things that weren't really there. Yeah. Just because my imagination was.
So it's hard to I think there's just a disconnect with adults to kids sometimes. And that can be really difficult for the kids and the adults, but mostly hard on the kids.
Another memory during this time in my life, we went to Publix, which is where we shopped for groceries.
They don't have that out here in the West.
And that's back in Florida. All this happened in Florida now. And I remember stealing a pack of Fruit Stripe gum. And I put it in my pocket, and I came home, and I shoved the whole thing in my mouth when I got into my closet. And I remember my mom calling for me to help her with probably putting away groceries.
Oh, no.
And I had a mouthful of gum, and she was like, "Where did you get that?" You know. Oh, and I was just crying.
How old were you?
So still 6,
okay.
probably. And so we went back to the grocery store, and I had to tell the manager, and he said, "If you ever do that again, I'm going to call the police for stealing." And I remember being like, "I promise I'll never do it again."
I have the exact same story, but I stole candy bars. And I got away with some of them.
I never did it again. That was the only time I ever stole anything.
Me too.
It's funny now, like thinking back, I have very few memories before the divorce.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have a lot of memories right about the time of the divorce and after.
I wonder if sometimes, like right now, for instance, I just went through a really hard week with my grandma dying and like CVX, and like I wonder how much of this I'm really going to want to remember.
Yeah.
And it is a choice to remember sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we really don't want to remember things, and so we'll intentionally not think about them the second we're done with them. And like be like, I don't want to remember that. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to focus on that. And then you forget them.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder, because you were talking in the last episode about how I feel like, or you feel like I have a lot more memories than you from when I was younger, like 3.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I'm like, I wonder if that's because you had more trauma at that time than I did.
That I've blocked out of my memory?
Yeah.
It's possible, I guess. Or it also just could have been the age, you know. That's about the time, like 5 or 6 is about the time that kids start to actually remember things long term. And very few people remember things.
I remember things long term from 3 on. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't and then I forgot most of that year. It was like, no, I remember all those years.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting.
That's really interesting. What do you remember? I guess that's the end of my divorce memory experience.
Well, from the time I was 3, I started remembering full on, and I was just chatting with my mom in between these podcasts, and she was saying, no, that was when you were 2. This was when you were 2 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I used to go all the way back when Ryan was in preschool, so that means he was 4, so I was 2. And we would drop him off at preschool, and then we would go to the store and get donuts. And I would always get like pink sprinkled donuts, the cliche classic donut, you know, because that's what every kid gets. It's like the best exciting thing ever. The sprinkles taste amazing, even though they taste like crap in real life.
We used to get free cookies at Publix every time we went to Publix.
Oh yeah. But I had this specific memory of like going there, and this is a very clear memory to me, like going there and begging my mom to get Fun Pack, like I think that's what it's called, like Fun Pack or whatever, and it's like pixie stick dust with a little sugar stick that you stick you lick it and dip it in there, or lick and dip, I don't know, something like that. And I got that, and I was the happiest child in the world. And I just remember like the whole package was wet from my slobber, and I was so happy, and I just kept eating it. And I think I ate all of one kind, and then I saved the rest for home. And I got home and ate the rest later, you know. But that technically was when Ryan was 4 and I was 2. So I have a lot of memories from back then. But I was born in Kansas, and then we moved from there to Spring Glen, and Spring Glen, so we were in Kansas for like 2.5 years, and then we moved to Spring Glen. I had some of my first memories there.
So
3.
That would mean, did the pixie stick thing happen while you were in Kansas?
It must have, because...
Or did it happen in Spring Glen?
I might have been in Spring Glen. I'm not sure. That's something I'd have to ask my mom, like, when did we move and what age was I? Because I remember I feel like when big things happen, like moving, it like triggers something different in your brain. and all of a sudden you start, like, that's how I felt. Like, maybe from the move, that point on, it was like, now I can remember everything. I don't know why. But we moved to Spring Glen, and my parents were not very financially doing very well. And then my dad was working at the coal mines, and he hurt his back at some point in there. I'm not sure exactly when. All I remember is that my dad used to run and be like strong, and then he stopped. One day he just couldn't run anymore, and I still have memories of him running, chasing Jessica down the street in a diaper because she was supposed to be dressed or naked or something, running away.
When did he stop running?
Around that time when I was probably 5.
I thought that's not the same as when he got injured and stopped working.
He got injured, I think, actually around that time. But then it got worse and things happened, and like it's kind of muddled.
When did he stop working though and come home full time?
Oh, that was when I was like 12.
So there was 7 years after he got injured that he was still working.
I think so.
And he got injured again and had back surgery and then quit.
I think so. I mean, it's muddled. Because I always I just know when he was running and when he stopped.
Yeah.
You know, like that in my childhood brain.
Yeah.
But he got hurt, and I remember something really scary. My parents would watch they would watch X-Files too, but they would watch like murder mystery shows that were real life, like 2020. I don't know. It was just, I don't know what it was exactly, but they were watching one day, and one of them was like about a dad doing something really bad to a little girl, and I was like horrified that my dad was like that, because he was working so much. I didn't really know him, and I was terrified of him for like I don't even know how long. I was very scared of him, and I knew that I loved him, but I just didn't know if he would do something like that to me.
Yeah. And
so it scared me, which actually, now looking back, I'm really grateful that he broke his back, because then he ended up coming home and we got to know him better. We never really knew our dad that closely. It was always our mom that we knew really, really well. And I felt like I could say anything to my mom. I did not feel like I could say anything to my dad because I just didn't know him. Mm-hmm. But when I was 4, so we were living in Helper at the time when I was 4. My brothers, and I at this point, I think I've shared some memories, but I want to kind of share life-changing things now. I was 4 years old, and my teacher in our church was actually the sheriff of the town, and I knew him really well, and he was a really nice guy. But Andrew and Ryan left to go play. I don't think I asked my mom. I didn't really ask my mom to go play back in the day that much. I kind of just disappeared when I wanted to. Oh, man. But they left, and
this was in Helper still? In
Helper. And there was this 12-year-old boy that they wanted to play with, and so it was down in the river bottoms. That's all I remember. I don't remember how I got there. I just remember we were there. And I was following them around trying to play with them, and my Andrew and Ryan were like, "Get away, go home. This is our friend. We want to play. Go home. You don't get it." Just the typical brother thing. And I'm like, "I want to play too. I'm going to come. I want to play." And I've never shared this on the internet because I've never had a good place where I can share something sensitive. I think this is a good place. Again, I don't know. Part of the reason why I've never shared it is just because I don't want anybody's opinion, unless it's good, something good. I don't want anything said that would hurt me. So out of self-preservation, I've not shared this story before. Anyways, they were playing. I wanted to play with them. They ran away. All the boys disappeared. And then Andrew and Ryan were gone. And I remember the boy coming back, and he was 12 and I was 4. And he just was like, "Take off your clothes." And I was like, "Okay." I was 4, okay. So I did. And then he just was touching me and like curious and putting his finger in places he shouldn't, type of thing. And I was just standing there, whatever, just didn't know what was going on. And then I think Andrew and Ryan came back, and I put my clothes back on or whatever, or like I think he said okay, put your clothes back on or something, so I did. And then the boys came back, and then we all went home. And I mentioned to my mom, that boy touched me or something, and she said on the inside, this is later I found out, on the inside she was freaking out, so worried. But on the outside she's like, oh, what happened? Like, just kept her calm, very, very calm. Oh, I need to call Sarah Stever. Anyways, on the outside she was just really calm, and she was like, okay, and then what happened next? And I told her, and then she was like, okay, and then after that, what did he say, or what did he do? And I was just like, he said this, he said he did this. Like, I had no reason to lie. I was just saying what happened for the day, like, very matter of fact. I'm grateful that it happened when I was so little, because I think that had an impact on whether or not it would have mentally hurt me more. Anyways, I shared all that with my mom, and then she said, do you want to tell that to brother whatever his name is from the church, your teacher? And I was like, sure. He was the sheriff, so my mom was really lucky that he happened to be the sheriff at the time. So she invited him over, and he sat down, and I just shared the same story, and they asked me some questions, and that's all I really knew. That's all I really experienced. And my mom was just like, okay, thanks so much for telling us. Like, good job. Give me some candy, like total whatever. I just said what happened. And then come to find out, my mom went to court about it and had the primary teacher there saying everything that I had said, and like, it was a big deal. And he was in court. He had to do like some, what is it, service? What is it?
The 12-year-old boy?
Yeah. Mom said he had to do like 100 hours of community service, and he was in big trouble, and his mom felt really, really bad about it all. And they left the case open or something like that, so that if anything ever scarred me really bad, that they would be able to go back and say, we need therapy or whatever. Anyways, that's what I found out like when I was 17. Way later. I had no idea they went to court. I was just like, hey mom, do you remember I told you all that? She's like, yeah, did you know this happened? And I was like, what? No, I had no idea. I just thought my mom wanted to know the story. But that helped me be aware at a very young age what was okay and what was not okay. Because I think my mom taught me, she wasn't just like, oh, okay, thanks. She was like, that's not okay. He shouldn't have done that. Like, that's not a good thing. And don't let people touch you, So that was my first experience with anything like that. And it was when I was 4, and I can tell that I was protected. It could have been something much worse. It was not. And I'm grateful for that. And I think everybody goes through stuff like that, because there's lots of humans on this earth. I don't know. What did you think when you heard that story for the first time?
I don't know. I guess I feel like that kids do that kind of stuff a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think that especially when they're younger, they're just kind of like, like you said, in the bathtub, curious, like, what's this? What's
Mm-hmm.
that? Nothing intended by it. And I think at
Unless
12,
it starts to getting,
I think at 12 years old, he knew better.
Mm-hmm.
He was obviously, but at the same time, my thought goes like, what was his life experience that would cause him to be so bold, like,
Yeah.
because was he never taught that wasn't okay? Or maybe somebody messed with him, or, I don't know.
Yeah.
What, because that's just, even at 12 years old, that's not normal
Yeah.
for a 12-year-old boy to think that that kind of a thing is okay.
Tell somebody to take off their clothes.
Right. Unless there was something in his life that was making him feel like he needed that. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's when you start going through puberty. There's a lot of reasons why it could have happened.
Right.
I'm grateful that it wasn't worse than it was. And I'm grateful that it was like handled the way that it was too, because I think that showed me how important it was to not do that.
Yeah.
Like if there was anything less that happened, I probably would have been like, oh, that's no big deal. I guess this is normal. But I didn't feel that way. I was like, oh, I recognize that that's not good now. So if that ever happens again, I'm going to tell my mom. I'm going to let her know, you know.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to say, no, don't do that. I don't want to do that, you know. Anyways. Whew. I haven't shared that with the internet.
How does it feel?
I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird because I don't really want to talk about that to people, you know. Like,
right.
I mean, it's scary to share stuff like that because I worry about opening a can of worms with the internet, you know. But how important is it? You know, that's the real question, because I asked myself, should I share that or should I not? Well, I think what blows my mind is when I do usually share that, I hear people say things like, oh, I thought that was okay. Or, oh, that happened to me. No big deal. Or, oh, that happened to me and it really scarred me, but nobody was on my side. Or like they treated it like it was a small thing and not important. So from that point on, I've let people do that to me. You know, like, this is important. And that's why I was like, I think I need to talk about this and not just gloss over, sugarcoat it like it's nothing. Because we are worth it. Like, if any of you are going through it, something like that, it's not normal. It's not okay for other people to just take liberties, you know, like to just do whatever they want with you. That's not okay. That's not normal. And it needs to be treated like it's not normal, like it's not okay. And if you don't get the support you need, go searching for the support you need. Don't talk to the people who aren't supporting you. Find someone else. You know, because I think when you start to believe that it's normal, when you start to believe that no one cares or no one thinks it's a big deal, then I think that really does a number on your self-worth, and you start thinking, oh, I'm not important enough to have that be a big deal. People don't care enough about me to have it affect them. When in reality, it's probably that they've had that happen to them and they were told it's not a big deal. When their initial reaction was, it was a big deal. And then they were just shut down. So I think it's important to talk to our kids about all this stuff too. Like, and to let them know, hey, this is going to happen at some point in your life. Something like this will come up. And it's not to be ignored. It is important. It is a special experience once you're married to do things like that. And it's not to be treated lightly or glossed over, sugar-coated, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's heavy topics in today's episode. I actually had some experiences right around that same age when I was 6, but I don't know if I even want to get into it because I feel like I was affected by it for my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have a memory of it happening, but you don't have any baggage from it.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
But when what happened to me happened, it's like I've never forgotten it, and I feel like it has affected me.
Yeah.
You got to figure out how to get those alarms to calm down on your phone.
It's just a reminder that I need to call someone.
Okay. So, I don't know. I don't know if I want to share it. And
And you know
it's
what?
just because it's a really hard thing to
That's okay.
talk about.
Like, just as much as it's... I feel blessed in that it wasn't a super... it could have been much worse. It's not that I'm taking it lightly. It's that it could have been much worse. And I was at an age where I was so young that I do feel like I don't really have baggage from it. I really don't. I learned lessons from it, but I don't feel negatively impacted every day or reminded of it all the time. So I feel like I'm blessed in that I can share it and I can talk about it. But I haven't up until now, like with anyone besides like you or my family, you know.
Maybe I don't feel like I can share my experience because I don't feel like I've even still fully healed from it.
And that's okay, you know. I think that's normal. And I think it would be wrong to put pressure on you to share.
Yeah.
I think it would be wrong for anyone to put pressure on anyone if they have something traumatic that they've gone through that has impacted their life. And it's almost like forcing someone to talk about it is putting it lightly because they're not ready to yet.
And it's not respecting the gravity of what happened.
Yeah.
I'll say, all I'm going to say, I guess, then is this kind of a thing happens to girls. The thing that happened to you happens a lot to girls, but it also happens to boys.
Yeah.
From women or girls.
Yeah.
So it's not just boys doing it or men doing it. It goes both ways. And I think it's important to know that both girls are sensitive and boys are also sensitive and should be respected equally.
We all have bodies. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
Yep. Oy. Oy. Take a deep breath.
I love you.
Whew. I love you too. And I think it's important to note that when you treat these things seriously, then you recognize as an adult that you deserve better, and you will be I think if it's handled the correct way, you should be able to say, I'm worth it, and I don't want to be treated this way. I will be treated better. Our camera's about to die.
We gotta wrap it up
We've been
anyway.
talking about this for a long time.
Well, I think that next episode will have some more positive things to talk about. So if you guys have similar experiences, if you feel like you need a place to share, we're here to hear you, or get help from someone who's a professional.
Yes, definitely. If you feel like you can't get past it, something you can't heal from, then that's probably something you should be talking about.
Probably something I should do, actually.
It's probably true.
Anyway, we love you guys. You are worth it. You are special, and you are very important. And never forget that.
Yep.
Okay.
You are worth it.
We love you guys.
Bye.
Bye.